The sexual miseducation of black men in America. It explores and explains the psychological, emotional, behavioral, and relational impact that our sexual conditioning has had on us as black men. For far too long, we have allowed one of the smallest organs on our body to have the most control over our lives. In this book, we will explore the impact that our sexual miseducation has had on every part of our lives as black men. We will re-educate the next generation of men on how to value themselves by teaching them real ways of measuring their manhood and combating the notion that their manhood is based on the number of women that they sleep with or how well they perform in the bedroom. The sexual miseducation of black men in America will help parents in our community understand what it will take to grow their prince into the position of king. We will assist black men with overcoming one of the biggest struggles that we are faced with. That is the temptation of casual and meaningless sex. This alone has stopped millions of us from living up to our full potential. The sexual miseducation of black men in America. It's coming.
And mainly the unhealthy sexual habits that we learn, the unhealthy sexual lessons that we learn as black men. A lot of it affects us in so many different ways, psychologically, behaviorally, emotionally.
The act of sex in, 5th or 6th grade in health class, they start to talk to you about what sex is.
I tell her he loved her when he didn't really love her, right? And so what I took from that was, I'm never going to say those words unless I mean it.
End up being with this chick. She might just be a one-nighter and that's it. So we don't get out that stage until we like older. I mean, it's sad, but it's realistic.
It's almost like slowly pushing all the other people out, because at one time we all have multiple chicks here, there, and other way.
He didn't explain nothing or nothing. He just stopped hitting her up on that regard, stopped answering what she requested, and she kind of went off on him. And he was like, "Oh no, I got into a relationship, so I just didn't, it wasn't really appropriate." But she was like, "Well, you could have told me."
All right. That was quite the intro. So it's good evening, good people. What's up, brothers? How y'all doing?
Good, man. How you, bro?
I'm doing great. Welcome for anybody that's watching. This is a live broadcast for the sexual miseducation of black men in America. This is the prelude, I should say. As you know, the book will be dropping this Saturday, March 18th. So it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be on my website. It's going to be available on Amazon, and I'm going to be having the book release. But before that comes, I wanted us to start to have some conversation around this topic about the sexual miseducation of black men. Hopefully you've been seeing some posts and you've been engaging in some of the discussion. The main focus of this book, I should say the main reason why I entitled this book, The Sexual Miseducation of Black Men in America, because I believe a lot of what we've been learning, a lot of what we've been taught as black boys and black men have been destructive. It's been toxic. It's just been wrong in a lot of ways. When it comes to sex, when it comes to relationship, when it comes to women, and when it comes to ourselves. We've learned some very destructive lessons that affects not only us, but it affects our community in general. So I want to have a conversation, not to only explore the psychological and the mental and the relational and the behavioral impact that these lessons has had on us as black men, but also to discuss some of the ways we can bring forth some type of change. Some ways we can reach back and touch the next generation of young men that have been affected or impacted by this sexual miseducation system that I like to call it, because it's definitely a system in my eyes. It's not just one individual. It's not just a group of people. I think it's been a system that's been created, and we've also have voluntarily been a part of this system. So before we even start the conversation, you see I got my brother Gregory and my brother Brian on here. Please introduce yourselves, and we're just going to jump right into this conversation. Not going to be on here too long. But I know it's going to be a strong discussion.
Yes, sir. I am Pastor Gregory Devon out of Durham, North Carolina. I throw a lot of relationship events around the Triangle area, geared towards healthy relationships, a lot of love education, healthy relationships, and I'm all about connecting people in a healthy way.
Awesome. Bryant Fagan's here. I am coming to you guys from Phoenix, Arizona, where I am currently. I really enjoy the interactions that you have, Brother Bracewell, around this topic. So I feel pleasured to be here, to be able to be a part of this. I've just a little background. It doesn't make me important. It just makes me involved. I've been involved with men and boys events, volunteering, Miss Black America pageant, truancy awareness, recovery houses, halfway houses, detention centers, men after jail. So for about 20 years. So I'm kind of involved in this. And one of the best things I can say that I've never cheated. And yesterday my divorce was final 5 years, and I'm still strong in my singleness. So I understand that, you know, any man can share his penis. Very few know how to share their genius. So I'll stop with that.
Okay. All right, brother. Nah, like I said, it's a pleasure and an honor to have both of y'all on this panel discussion tonight. I want to jump right into it. My first question, I always like to kind of establish a baseline before we get into the topic. So I want to understand, or want to get your perspective on what was your biggest influence when it came to sex, relationships, and women growing up. What were some of the things that influenced the way you view those things?
My biggest influence was shaped by my parents, and that is because I come from a two-parent home. You know, I was raised in the church. Doesn't mean that I'm perfect or did everything perfect, but I had a model in the home. I watched my father treat my mother well. I watched, you know, the response from my mother to my father. I was raised by what I consider an old school man, meaning that there was no tolerance for mistreating women. There was no tolerance for not saying yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. There was no tolerance for not holding the door open. There was no tolerance for me not providing that protection when my father was not around, for my sister and my mother. So I grew up understanding what my responsibility was to a woman moving forward. Into adulthood, it became that much easier to understand what the connection should be towards me, another woman. It doesn't mean that all of my decisions were always correct, but I always had a baseline to go back to check information. When I had questions, my father was always around where I would understand what this relationship needs to look like. You know, seeing my parents, who have now been married for 44 years this year, I've always had, in my opinion, a measuring stick to gauge my own relationships with, meaning I'll never have the same thing that they have, but I was able to see what a functional, healthy relationship looks like. In regard to sex, I've got my father, I've got uncles who always showed me and talked to me about what these relationships should look like between man and woman. You know, I was able to ask questions about sexuality, about sex. I was never made to feel ashamed to bring a question about sex. And because of that, I did not grow up with curiosity, because those questions were always answered for me.
Awesome. So it seems like we have some balance today because my my story is my story. I love it. As I stated, I've never cheated. I've never tried to date two women at one time. I've been able to turn down sex, but I guess the other thing, more importantly, in a man is not being able to turn down sex is okay because what if she's not your challenge? The best part of what I can say a man or a king should be is when you're not a predator. So, with that being said, my father had 12 children. My father was all over the place. He was a police officer. He served, but he didn't protect. So, I was raised by my mother in the projects in North Philly, East Falls, and I'm I've always been articulate. I clean up well, all of these things. So my mom told me that you don't have to oblige every person that comes in your face. So what she was trying to tell me is that I didn't have to always respond because somebody was in my face. So I think a mother's affection, as in Proverbs 31:3, where King Lemuel's mom tell him, do not spend all your strength on vigor, do not spend all your strength on women or all your vigor on them that ruin kings. So my mom telling me that I didn't have to oblige everybody in my face. I got out of high school still a virgin, Roman Catholic. So I had uncles all over the place. My brother died at 20. He had 5 kids just in the projects. So my story was, I also saw an example of what I didn't want to do. And I thought about it maybe some years later. And I was like, you know what? I never wanted to be to women what some of the men were to my aunts and, you know, my mom and some of the women that I saw growing up in the projects who had kids all over the place. So mine is also from sight, from vision. So it's amazing what we see and how it affects us as young men.
See, I like what I'm hearing. I like what I hear because you brothers had some very positive influences, some very strong influences in your life that impacted the way you see relationships and the way you view women and view yourselves in general. How different do you think your experience was in comparison to maybe friends or the majority of guys growing up in your area as far as their influences on, you know, sex and women and relationships? How different was yours than, would you say, the majority, or would you say yours is common?
I know for a fact that the way that I view women, even when I was younger, was not the same as some of my closest friends, because we don't all come from the same background or household. And my thing is, I was always raised to recognize right and wrong, but it does not mean I always chose the right path. I've had moments in my life where, knowing the right thing to do, I did not do the right thing. You know, Paul said, when I would do good, evil is always there. And there are times where I did choose the wrong path. There are times where I did choose to not make the correct decision with this young lady in my younger years. And I knew that I was wrong. The difference is I always had a God conscience. So I could never go but so far outside the lines before pulling my own self back in. Whereas I had peers sometimes who would just stay in that mess. You know, you're going down this line and you keep doing it. My thing is, I had a conscience. I have a sister also, and I have an older sister. And my thing was, I would never want someone to do to my sister something that was incorrect. So I always would catch myself before going too far. Mm-hmm. And even to the point of, when you know that you're wrong or have done something, I can't not apologize for certain things because I was raised a certain way. And even when I was younger, you know, let's just take, you know, whether it is trying to talk to multiple women, you know, I couldn't do that but for so long because I feel bad about it. But that comes from, again, I wasn't raised by a man who ever okayed that. And even the men in my family, to my knowledge, were not that type of men either. and they never raised me to think that having multiple women was okay. One of the things that cripples young boys is that we laugh at toxic behaviors that because someone is 5, 6, or 7, we don't consider it toxic. But when a young child says, I got 4, 5 girlfriends, that's a problem. That was never my reality. And no one ever laughed at it in my family.
Okay. What about you, Brian? What do you think was different from your upbringing, your teachings, and your friends that were surrounding you?
Well, my mom was pretty active. She's a committee person now where she is. And my mom was very active in the community center. Kids came over all the time. But my grandma was like that. She was a committee person. So I would have to say that genuine feminine energy is what changes the nature of men and man, because a man is a natural hunter. So I did a Facebook Live where I called it misguided testosterone. And the M was MISS. So we're misguiding it, but also when it's guided by a woman, emotions, as opposed to a man, it's going to produce beta boys that run around banging girls. And alphas or kings are always going to protect women, because I know that I have to protect my seed. So every soil isn't term oil, TERMOIL, meaning the oil or the actual thing that you need to get you to where your term is, to what your purpose is. Some seeds, some soil is term oil and some are turmoil. So I understood that everybody wasn't worthy of what I was. I wanted to be a priest anyway. So I always wanted to help people. Even now when I tell people I don't have a proclivity to sex, I don't need it. I mean, it's just some things, sex doesn't happen the same way every time. Some things we need, our soul needs more than sex. Yeah, there's a release or whatever, but when your mother is affectionate, she's caring with her hands, and then she smacked me up too. There's a bunch of times I got smacked up outside of 7th grade, the projects, outside. My mom, she laid them hands fast, baby. They was thick too. So my mom having that balance of, and then my aunt had some big hands, and then you ain't want no problems with my uncle. But I would say it had to be my mom's affection, man, because we don't come out having sex, but we do understand affection through words, through touch, through contact. So when you don't have that proper amount of affection as your base, you tend to, focus on your flesh. And then there's a point where boys hit that age of testosterone where they're aiming their gun at girls, or they're aiming a gun at boys. Because that's what men, we call our thing, our gun. That's what we called it when we were younger, growing up in the projects. So I had a lot of friends that ran around and run through women. One of them's got like 7 kids. I'm several of them godfather, but I kind of had to slow him down, and I got upset a couple times. But I got a little crazy after my brother died. I was 18 and my brother was killed when he was 20. So I kind of got a little crazy for maybe about 5 years, and then I brought it back in. So after 24, I kind of just settled back in. But my mom, like I said, I figured it out maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I never wanted to be to women what I saw the men and even my father and, and my older brother's dad. I never wanted to be that to women. So I kind of, and if I don't like you, nothing happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have that priest anointing. I didn't have that.
Yeah. I wanted to be a priest.
Okay.
At 12 years old.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow. So the topic is the music in the media, the images, the songs, the impact that has on our sexual miseducation as Black men. So I want to dig deeper into that, on how that influences us, or how you've seen that influence men in general. So when you think about music and the media and the images that we often see, what do you think is the impact on young black men when it comes to their sexuality and how they manage their sexuality? What type of lessons would you say that they're learning from it? What type of habits are being formed by what they hear and what they see?
The intimacy has been taken out of love in the media and in music. You know, if you hear songs about sex today, even songs about love, they've taken all the intimacy out and they've replaced it with aggressive terms. You know, I'm gonna beat it up, I'm gonna tear it up. And whenever a man is doing something to a woman, it's an aggressive term. And we all know that the only emotion universally that men are conditioned to say is okay is anger. So his anger sometimes comes out not just in the music, but also in real life. There are times when us as men have utilized sex as a means to release our stress, our aggression, our anger towards life. And it comes again from, it's promoted in the media, it's promoted in the music, that there's nothing loving about sex in our music. There's nothing loving about sex, even in the media. On reality television, it's always aggressive. I'm a pound, I'm a beat, this and the third. So we end up treating this woman, we dehumanize her because we see her as just a sexual object or a means of release. And a lot of us, because we've been conditioned and socialized by the media, by this music, then we don't even see a need for genuine connection. Because the truth of the matter is, gentlemen, is that as men, the thing that we lack the most is intimacy with each other and with our woman. Because intimacy at the root of it is not about sex. It's about trust. And the reality is you'll never be at a point to trust if you cannot form intimate relationships. We sometimes as men struggle with each other because we don't know how to have intimate relationships. Why? Because we were taught that the only avenue to intimacy is sex. When the truth of the matter is that's not true. You need to incorporate intimacy within sex to then be able to make love. But that's not what we want to do. Now, in our heart of hearts, we do need intimacy. But notice when a man reaches his sexual peak and climaxes, he does not move from in between this woman's legs. Why? Because now he's experiencing intimacy, closeness, connection. Because in his mind, the only way and the only street and avenue to get to this is sex. When he could have just said, prior to this moment, I just need a hug. I just need to be held. Can you talk to me? But we don't know how to communicate intimacy because we've never been taught how to communicate intimacy. We're taught the measure of a man is how many women you get. I mean, this go back to slavery. They pick men slaves based upon what? The size of their genitalia. So even today, we characterize ourselves based upon what? What we can do down there. And that's why we sometimes don't know how to open up and have real relationships because we are crippled in this area of intimacy. And we're replacing that with sex. And many of us have had a bad experience further early on in life, such as molestation, such as you lost your virginity way too soon. So now you have disconnected your emotions from this sexual experience. So now what you've been educated on is, in your words, a miseducation, because what you know, you need to unlearn. But again, nobody ever checks us sometimes because we are too alpha to be checked. And we feel like, how dare you tell me that I'm wrong? If it's worked to this point in my life, I'm not going to change. And that's a man's downfall when he stops learning.
Amen.
So the music. So Satan was the first musician. Things can get played into your spirit without your permission. Music. I put a K on the end of it. I call it music or rape music. Rap music, but I put a parenthesis around and put E on there because it's violence, sex, deception, and scandal. When I used to speak, probably starting about 21 years ago, when I first started speaking in Philadelphia School District, I would always open up with this poem I would do, and it sounded like a rap because I know that's what catches boys because they like pitch, passion, and pace. They like puns. They like wordplay. So I do acronyms in my sleep, Brother Bracewell. So the music, misleaders, unapologetically sacrificing innocent children. So the music out here, it's always about money, drugs, and sex. It's always about me being a predator. It's not about hunting. It's about the miseducation of what I think women want to hear. Most women like to be lied to, so men get up and sing. I'm gonna give y'all a bonus nugget. In the beginning, there was no other woman around when Eve veered off to talk to the devil. So if you understand that women want communication and validation, and they're always trying to measure a man. How tall are you? How much money do you have? Can you buy me this? Can you buy me that? She wants to measure you with sex. So when you understand that women will veer off of validation and communication, and they also are the ones that need to be needed, or they want to be wanted, a man needs to be needed. Once you understand that a woman can be like just a vacuum, always just pulling, you kind of say, hey, you know what? I see this, and this is not the way I'm going to go. So like I said, with no other woman around, it was not the man who veered off for validation or communication. It was Eve. So we're going to believe the word. We got to believe all the word. So we got to look into it. So that's a little bonus nugget right there. But Satan was their first musician. I think Eve said, hey, big boy, I got something for you. Or she nagged him to death. She said, I got some fruit for you. So ever since then, boys have been trying to get back into the womb. And I think I understand why men cheat. Because, and it was in the Passion of the Christ when Jesus stumbled and Mary went to go catch him. A woman is always trying to heal the hurt of her boys and her sons. So when you have women catering to you because they're trying to pour into you because they're nurturers, you get seduced by the nurturer. It's why I don't keep women friends. It's why I keep them at bay. It's why I keep them far away. It's why I read some of the signs that they give me. Because most men don't want sex. We want submission. That's what we want. Three things will get us: the gold, the glory, or the girls. Right? Most men want the glory. Because that's the reason why Satan got in trouble. And that's the reason why we puff up and we wear certain type of clothes and we drive V12 cars and we want to go to the gym and get muscles and we want to have big watches and all that stuff. So the music is really what music with a K on it. It's really what sends out through the media. Satan's the prince of the air, and the media and the mediums are how people get information to the masses.
Yeah. Sure.
And speaking of your point about music and waves, the Bible says faith come by hearing and hearing the word of God. So all of us are impacted by what we hear. What we hear is what builds our faith. That woman had an issue of blood in the Bible, and she heard that Christ was passing by. And what she heard made her believe something. So what we hear in the music, in the media, it makes us believe something. You think about, if Satan is the prince of the air, what's in the air? Sound waves. Waves are going through the air all the time. And what's an ultrasound? It's a picture, but a picture that's painted by waves. So an ultrasound gives you a picture of waves. Well, when we have these waves getting into our psyche, there's a picture being painted in our head of something. And knowing that Lucifer was an angel of music, knowing that Lucifer had a tambourine on the end of the coat that he wore, you know, so there's power in the beats that you hear, and sometimes these beats will catch your attention. Then these waves and these words get rooted into your spirit, because why? Because faith comes by what? Hearing. And we don't realize that what we embrace in is going to come out of us. But sometimes we are conditioned to think I'm above the influence, and we find ourselves treating women just like what's on this music. You know, wait till you see my whoa. You know, my mind says no, my body says yes. Your body is calling for me. All these things are getting put into us, and we are rationalizing why we listen to all of this stuff, not realizing that, you know, even those that walk with Jesus were subject to human frailty. And sometimes we are so spiritual that we don't address our humanity. It is really not our flesh that we struggle with. Jesus told Peter, Satan desired to sift you as wheat, but I prayed for you that your faith fail not your flesh, but your faith, because we already know what the flesh is going to do, is going to feel. So it's up to us with our faith to get this right here straight. But we don't want to put ourselves in an environment to change our mind and to unlearn these very, very unhealthy behaviors sometimes, because we don't want to be corrected.
Yeah. Anyone that says that music is just entertainment, they're just lying to themselves.
Right.
Like music creates a mood. Music kind of dictates the culture. Music, it can control your emotion, and it can control your thoughts. So it's way more just than entertainment. And for our young men that generally grows up on listening to rap music, and they gravitate to it, they can identify with it because the rappers are them. And you know, they look like them, they talk like them, they walk like them. Rap music becomes their form of worship, and the rappers become their god in certain communities.
Yeah.
Like, and not even, and I can't even separate myself from it because I grew up on hip hop music.
Me too.
In the book, I tell a story about when I had to be maybe 11 or 12. At this point, you know, I probably had a little growth spurt. I was feeling myself, felt like I was getting older. And the first tape that I can remember purchasing was Slick Rick tape. It was the Great Adventures of Slick Rick.
I played Teenage Love last night in my car, sir.
That was the first one I recorded. But do you remember the first song on that tape or CD? It was Treat Her Like a Prostitute. As soon as you put it, that's the first track. That's the first track, and I played that tape and that album over and over again. And I'll be lying to say if that message did not get embedded inside me in a way I started to view women and started to even wanting to treat women. And it didn't stop there with Slick Rick. It carried on with all the other music that I was listening to. Even as I got older, in my teens or early 20s. Yeah, I know y'all remember the Snoop and the Dog Pound. Their motto was, "Ain't no fun if my homie can't get none."
Right.
And it became a real goal for me and my friends to try to have sex with a girl and pass it to the next guy and pass it to the next guy. So music really does impact your behavior if you allow it to. So my next question is, how can we change that? How can we change that behavior? How can we help the next generation of men to overcome some of the influence and some of the impact that this music that they listen to have on them? Because I know if I was listening to something like "Ain't No Fun If My Homies Can't Get None" back in the 90s, I can only imagine what my son is listening to now, or his friends. I'm sure it's become much more graphic, much more vulgar, and much more direct. So how do we help the next generation of men when it comes to this?
Well, to stop being afraid of the conversation, first of all, and we have to be willing to be transparent, and to not make the generation behind us feel as if they are alone in this or that we're picking on them. We have to talk about the experience that we had when we were their age. You know, the truth of the matter is you have to understand a system to be able to change it or make change of any kind. We have to realize that when you think about music and the media, you have to talk about when did it change? Because the reality is hip hop is king now. But in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was R&B. And somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe, a shift happened because people of color, our R&B celebrated love. If they talked about sex, it was about making love. But we were talking about unity and being together and loving this woman in our R&B. But a shift happened. Once this stuff started to be promoted and we started to unite here in America, they didn't like that. So here comes now gangster rap, violent rap, sexual rap. And the misogyny of that became at the forefront. Look now. There are several songs that are R&B songs that do promote love, but will get no airplay. But let us put a song promoting our violence or our sexual misconduct. Those songs get airplay. Why? Because they want us to believe that is who we are. So when you think about us as black men now, young and older, we have to understand that they want us to think that about ourselves. And that's why I want to grab you, young man, now and help you realize that is not who you are or who you need to be. But if we don't, again, understand it to a point, we can tell them why it's unhealthy, how it's unhealthy, healthy. Talk about the change that happened and come down to their level. We will never make the change that we want to see. We got to start correcting 4, 5, 6-year-old young boys who are saying, oh, I got 2 girlfriends. No, you don't. That's not okay. Correct these behaviors at a young age so that when he's 10, he already knows, no, let me not say that, because again, if we're making light of these things, like even teach young boys at 5 years old to hold the door for their sister, for their mama. You old enough to know how to treat a woman. If you teach a young man how to be a gentleman very early, that's how you kind of curve some of these behaviors as he gets older, because he won't grow up thinking that abnormal is normal. He will realize at a young age, you know what? I have to be chivalrous and a gentleman towards these young ladies. I can't put my hands everywhere I want to put them. I can't view her as an object. She's a person just like I am. And my responsibility is to protect her, whether she's my woman or not. Young children, especially at 10, 11, 12, can understand that. But that's the conversation that we're not having. We got to put even sexuality conversations back in the church and stop being afraid to have that conversation. My thing is, you afraid they're going to start having sex. They sexing anyway. You got all these little Christians and the mama is 14 because you're not having the conversation. And my thing is, we're crippling this generation of men and women because we are rationalizing why we should keep them ignorant. And my thing is, it is your ignorance that is hurting you. But if you give them the education, help them to understand their bodies, who they are, give them the information, they can then make an informed decision as they get older and think critically through whatever.
Any thoughts on that, Brian?
Oh, this is a multi-layered issue. So, first, So I listen to Dr. Miles Monroe a lot, and he tells truth is original information. So the truth about sex, well, let's start with the truth. So a lot of times in the inner city, 3 things create our issues. We're told we're victims of sin, and it's always the devil's fault. It's not always the devil's fault. He's minding his business somewhere. It's our own consciousness or our ignorance or our decisions, because God has free will. God gave us all free will. He won't even make you worship him. So you're a victim of God. What good father always wants to punish his child? So we've been taught wrong in the church. Second one, we're a victim of politics. I'm a part of the pink party, so everything is the blues party or the reds party, right? So I can blame shift. And the third one is, this is why I hate labels. We're descendants of slaves. So which is harder for you to believe, listening audience, that God made you in his image and likeness, or you're a descendant of a slave? If Paul said, forgetting those things which are behind me, I press for the mark of the prize for the high call, how can I concurrently be a child of God and a victim of slavery or a descendant of slaves? I'm a descendant of character, integrity, honesty, love, trust, peace. That's what I'm an ancestor of, because nobody before, I don't know those people. I don't know who they were. And if everything has always been around, I'm pretty sure I had some really bad people in my ancestral line. I probably have some perverts, because it travels down to 3 and 4 generations. So we're too trapped on these threefold victim situations, and then we wonder why men victimize women, or we victimize each other, why there's so much anger, why there's so much rape, abuse, incest, there's so much violence towards each other, because they keep selling you this threefold victim package, and it's just not going to work. I got a nephew. My nephew was helping me. I was trying to get set up to be doing this, but it just will not work when you're a threefold victim. So I think we have to deprogram ourselves and reprogram ourselves. We have to stop talking about, oh, I'm black, I'm this, that, the other. I'm so many different things. When words can't explain me and pictures can't contain me. I am the image and likeness of God, made as priest and king. That's why I don't sling around my ding-a-ling, because kings don't do flings. And once you understand that my seed, every soil doesn't have the right amount of nurturance for me, then I'm going to be very careful as to where I go. And we got to get away from the narrative that we're just injured all the time, that we're victims. So sex is for oneness, pleasure, and procreation. That's what sex is for. So if we can aim and teach young people that, because personality is formed by the age of 5. So you're waiting to 12 and 13 where they're starting to hit that testosterone and that hormonal state. It's too late. So we have to be more proactive about talking about it, not trying to get raptured, because God said, don't worry about the day or the hour. He said, do your work. Work means to reveal, to become, and to manifest who you are on the inside. And that's from Dr. Miles Monroe. So we're too busy focused on trying to be raptured. God ain't tell you to worry about no heaven. And you keep thinking heaven is in outer space. No, heaven is in inner space. God said the kingdom was within. So we've been taught a lot of wrong stuff, even from the church, even at the beginning of the church, because it was always based out of slavery. It was always based out of all of these sad songs that we're singing. I'm pretty sure them slaves had some good times, or whoever they were. So there's so many different issues to peel back and layer as to why young black boys are having issues. The challenge is we're not shiny enough fruit. If God said man looks on the outward and God looks on the inside, I'm going to spruce up the outside, because I know what my inside is made of, so I can impact you, so I can get you to make a decision, so I can get you to follow me, so I can get you to do the things that we need to do. And then also Jesus taught entrepreneurs. Most of his disciples were entrepreneurs, meaning they understood authority.
Let me hop in and ask this question before I forget it. As we start to wind down. I just asked about how do we change the next generation of men?
How do we change the next generation of men?
So my next question might be the last question is, well, let me say this before I even ask the question. I used to work in schools, providing therapy for children in a school-based program. And I would wait outside the school, wait for them to come in, greet them. And a lot of the times it will be the parents rolling up, blasting all types of music with the kids in the back seat. And they're both singing it together, they rapping it together, they know all the lyrics. Parents and the child. The most I've seen vulgar lyrics that you wouldn't even play around an adult. They're playing around their kindergartner. What are your thoughts on that? As far as, yes, we can speak to the next generation of men, but what if it's the parents that have also grew up on this type of music and they're passing it down to the kids? How do we help them see it differently?
Well, that speaks to generational brokenness. One of the reasons that people can't change, gentlemen, is that they don't understand what's going on the inside of them. And to your question about, when parents are playing inappropriate music for young children, especially, they don't realize how damaging what they're putting into their child. Because when it comes out of that child, now you're going to see what it's really done. And sometimes, like, there's a story in Mark 5 talks about a man that has demons in him, and how the man actually desires to be better, but the man does not understand what's going on the inside of him. They left the man in the graveyard, in the caves. They can hear him howling at night. Jesus comes passing by. He runs to Jesus, and the man worships, but his demons try to intimidate Jesus. The man falls down to worship, but the demons in him say, "What have you to do with us, Jesus?" So the man wants to be better, but he cannot exercise the demons on the inside of him. That's what's wrong with us today, is that there's so many things on the inside of us that we don't know how to heal. We're not having the conversation in the home about therapy. We're saying, well, if it goes in this house, it stays in this house. Well, we all realize in the story in Mark 5 how bad the man's insides were when Jesus ends up casting those demons out the man. It's 10,000 demons in the man, right? And there were 2,000 pigs. He cast the demons into the pigs. So 5 demons per pig, basically. Those pigs went crazy, all of them. So can you imagine? Why didn't the man go crazy? Sometime again, we don't realize how bad we are on the inside until we see how it affects those around us. And we don't, as men, sometimes we don't change because we don't realize the impact and the gravity of how my behavior is impacting those around us. And then one day we look up and see the residuals of everything that we've done, all the women that we have mistreated, that we have used. Then we look at ourselves and realize, man, I've jacked my own self up. So in order for us to change this or to polish ourselves, as was said, it starts on the inside. There are lots of things on the inside we just don't get. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, all this stuff. We don't get it. And we don't have anybody sometime in our present who can help me to deal with what's on the inside of me. So again, what does a man do? Sex becomes his therapy, because sex produces what? A feel-good hormone, oxytocin, serotonin, all these feel-good hormones. So sex becomes our therapy because it makes me forget about the hardships of life. It makes me forget about the bad that I've done. I'm in this moment high on this natural drug in my body. So until, again, we got to help men understand who they are, how they are, whose they are, what's going on here. It's a heart problem that needs to change. But we're not talking to the heart, the mind, and the soul of men. And then even inside of church, we're coming to church only having an emotional experience. And even the Bible says men, deal with your wives with knowledge and understanding. Sometimes the disconnect from our women is because why? You're giving us emotion, and I'm looking for knowledge and understanding, and I can't relate to you on that level, but what I can do is have sex with you. So that's what we end up settling for, because we do not know another way. And that's why it's important that brothers watch shows like what you're putting on, AB, to get information. You're never going to change until you learn to do better. Wisdom is the principal thing, but in all you're getting, you get what? Understanding. And that's what we don't have. And people perish for what? A lack of knowledge.
Right. Brian,
I want to make sure I understand the premise of the question. Go ahead.
What do we tell the parents that are influencing these kids, playing the music that we're talking about, playing it around them? They're learning the lyrics. They're dancing to it on TikTok. They're playing it at family gatherings. All of the songs that we're talking about, and the parents are the ones that's influencing it. What would you tell a parent in that situation?
Well, wisdom would tell me that I heard it said that rules without relationship lead to rebellion. So what could I say to a parent who's full-fledged blasting music in that manner at that time where they're tapped in? And like I said, everybody thinks they're a victim. So if I say something to you, I'm attacking you because I'm a man, because I'm light-skinned, because I got a different tone in my voice. So pain produces powerful purpose. Some people will have to lose and lose and lose before they understand it. So you have 4 stages of consciousness. You have 5 stages of grief. There's so many different things that plays a part. But the solution is men and the church, we're not shiny enough fruit. Man looks on the outward, God looks on the outside. Young boys are looking for his mirror image of power. When he hits that puberty stage where his erection, because of REM sleep, he's got an erection, rapid eye movement. He also is getting facial hair. He's starting to get muscles. He's starting to notice himself. So he's like, man, what do I do with this power that I have? So I can't say anything to the parents if I'm not winning my neighborhood, my block, everywhere, because if they see me come dressed a certain way, speaking a certain way, giving out gifts, sharing things, like I was saying earlier, Jesus taught entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs understand authority, surplus, giving out stuff, order, and they have their time rich, meaning they have a system that works together where I can take my resources and I can give it out to you. Now I can have impact with you. Because if I don't have impact, if I say something to you, you're going to think I'm just trying to correct you. And that's the biggest challenge that the church have. Jesus said he came to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the sons and the sons back to the fathers. So men have to become more attractive. We have to be more vocal. We have to have more. We have to look better, because then you're never going to be able to compete with the rap music in the media. In media, the word actor means hypocrite. It's a Greek word for hypocrite. So you got a bunch of hypocrites running around here teaching people what they think they want to hear. Just like you got a lot of these women running around here singing these songs. We're getting effed up tonight. So hold on. So you're at the top of the food chain. You're married to a billionaire. You're married, but you're singing single party songs to everybody that buys your albums. And the women don't get it. They don't get it. And sometimes they won't let the men come in and be the men because they're too emotional. It's misguided testosterone. They're too feminine. They're mad at the dad. So they're just going to let the boys do whatever he wants. So he's going to be a beta because he's going to run around and he won't know what to do with his power. Because once again, boys are looking for the mirror image of power. That's why when they're 13, they're always in the mirror looking at themselves, brushing their hair and cutting their hair and doing push-ups and everything. That's what he's trying to find the mirror image of power. And until we can understand that your power ain't got nothing to do with your penis, it's in your genius. So once you learn how to turn down women, then, and not hunt them, then you become a man. But other than that, and don't confuse passion with anger. I'm not saying I have it all together. I'm not upset, but I have to be passionate in addressing these things because I know plenty of my brothers. I have 7 brothers. I know plenty of my brothers, my best friends. I might know 2 virtuous guys all in my whole life that I know didn't really take advantage of women. 2. One will be 50 in 7 days, and the other one is Brother Wade. You know him. Yeah. But that's crazy that's all I know is a couple guys that I know really, really, really like that I can say that are that way. Yeah. And so that's a challenge. So we have to become more attractive to the young people and to women because father means source. So I am allowed to source all of the women around me, source, sustainer, progenitor, protector, foundation of the house. So if I get the right amount of impact, but let's say if I impact the mother that's playing the music, because most of the time it's not guys, and you say something, now she's attracted to you. Now she's trying to position you. Now she's trying to angle you.
Let me hop in because the point you just said, I was going to build on that. That's why we having these conversations. When you stated there was only a few men that you know that was on that level, and that's why I wrote the book. That's why we're having this conversation because we know that even if we had the best upbringing, we had the best examples, the majority of our friends, the majority of our community, the majority of society of black men did not. The majority of them was miseducated. So
I didn't have it either growing up in the projects, but I just saw what it was doing to the community. I didn't have it either.
Yeah. So I wrote this book so that we can start to have these conversations more often, so that we can teach the next generation of men a different way of managing their sexuality. So we can show them a different path. It's not going to be it's not going to be an easy task.
Right.
It's a huge fight because we know what society is pushing. We know what media is pushing, what music, we know what the popular culture is pushing. So this is going to be a tough fight. And I'm glad that you brothers joined me tonight to start the fight and start the conversation. Hopefully we can continue it, not only between the 3 of us, but the boys in your life, the young men in your church, the young men in your neighborhood. They need to hear this because of this miseducation system. There's so many fatherless children. There's so many guys running around, abandoning their families, abandoning their kids. The hospitals and the clinics are filled with young men that has STDs and STIs and all types of stuff, and it becomes a cycle. Yet if a young man father wasn't in his life because he felt that sex was something casual, it was a time just to sow his wild oats and to move on, he's going to do the same thing. And then that young man is going to do the same thing. And it's destroying not only our women, but it's destroying our community as a whole.
Yeah. And can I just want to say one thing. I have a book that I was trying to work on, 12 Systems That Never Failed. I'm going to give you guys one. Men, show your sons true egoless manhood. So your body is a system. God made you. Your manual is the Bible. Your body's a system. The earth is a system. Do you know that when a man ejaculates, all of the fluid, oxytocin, vasopressin, like Dr. Greg just said, that fluid comes out of your brain, down your back, out the shaft of your penis and into a woman. So you're giving a woman a part of your brain. So if I give you a part of my brain, could you sustain it, contain it, or maintain it? That's the challenge, where we have to understand that I am the man. I make the decisions. And then also Miles Monroe said, Adam was told to cultivate. That means to make better with your hands. So boys, if you can't make her better with your hands, if you don't have enough protection for her, is there any protection in your erection? Meaning what you're raising up as far as who you're going to be as a person. And I'm talking about your other erection as well. But If you can't make her better, don't touch her, brother. Don't touch her. I'll pull away from a lot of women because I can't massage your brain enough for you to understand and follow me. So I'll leave you alone. But this is a great topic. I appreciate you, brother. I love you.
Tell them where they can find you, where they can follow you.
Just Brian Fagans on Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I just got Facebook. I'm just on Facebook. I'm small. I gotta get bigger. You know. That's
good. You good, man. You good right where you are.
Gregory,
tell them how people can follow you, where they can find you.
Let me say this one more thing. I'm gonna tell them. To your point, Mr. Brian, is that we don't understand the metaphysical science behind sex. When you talk about the exchange of DNA, that's a very powerful thing that people think is not real, but it is. People are wondering why that you're having children now who exhibit personality traits of those you used to date and not their father. It is because it is a part of you still in this woman, especially if you had a consistent sexual relationship with her. And when you think about biblically speaking, you create covenant having sex with a woman, whether you want to or not. And it is because in the Bible, the reason that sex signified that consummation is because if she was a virgin, you broke her hymen, meaning that blood was shed. In that day, blood signified covenant.
And the life of every creature is in the blood.
Yeah, man, because I mean, sex is supposed to be sacred, almost an act of worship. Because I'm at your temple gates, worshiping with you right now. You're at mine. But we don't view it that way because we have taken the sanctity out of it. It's no longer sacred. And we're investing ourselves in somebody else, never asking ourselves, what return will I ever get? And we are creating these children who grow up now into a broken home because you never had a desire to make it a home. And then the next generation is already born a step behind because you never gave them a platform to have a fair chance. You can reach me on Facebook, Gregory Devon, Instagram, Gregory Devon, Twitter, Gregory Devon, TikTok, Gregory Devon, same name, my name. So I love for you to follow me. I enjoy conversations about any and everything. I do thank you, AB, for the platform to be able to speak. I definitely enjoyed you as well, Mr. Bryant. So that is that.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. One other thing, Brother Wade told me that semen can stay in a woman's brain for up to 7 years. Up to 7 years, semen can stay in a woman's brain. So sisters, think about that. I'm done, brother.
All right. This is the sexual miseducation of Black men in America. So thank you guys for being a part of the conversation. I thank everyone that was watching, that commented, that liked. Please, you can follow me at AB Bracewell on Facebook or Ready for Relationships on Instagram. Listen, the whole purpose of me having this conversation is to bring some more awareness to gather men so we can not only teach each other but teach the young men that's coming up behind us. As you see behind me, I have the banner up. The book is coming out on March 18th. Please, you can go to my website, readyforrelationship.com, or you can find it on Amazon. Please support. You can DM me if you want a copy. I'll send it through the mail. Once again, this is the sexual miseducation of Black men in America. I hope y'all have a good night. God bless.
God bless you all.